The debate that's rocking the world of professional cricketing spousal travel. Are professional athletes distracted when their partners accompany them on tour? India's cricket board says yes and has just implemented strict new rules for players' wives. Georgie Tunney filed this report, but only after we made her send Millsy home.
For the first time in a decade, India lost the Border-Gavaskar series against Australia. And India's cricket bosses know who was at fault. The wives? India's Board of Control for Cricket has now decided strict tour limits will be placed upon players' partners. They will be allowed to travel for a maximum of 2 weeks on tours lasting more than 6 weeks. Shorter tours will see spousal attendance limited to 7 days.
I think there's a bit of a fine line to walk between making sure that the players spend lots of time together as a team, and when you're on tour, that's when all the great bonding happens, but there's probably a sensible middle way through. The last thing you want to do is ban people's partners and families from being with them when they're away for a long period of time.
But before you wag the finger at India's WAG ban, Australia's been there too. Alan Border imposed strict border controls for wives and girlfriends for the '89 Ashes tour. And Aussie cricket bosses did the same for the start of the 2019 World Cup and Ashes series. The spouses just always seem to cop it.
All their partners are here, and some of the most respected cricketers I played with hated that distraction. Cricket is a sport that requires complete concentration.
I don't like cricket. And that's why I don't like cricket.
But it's not just cricket that's tried pushing athletes into the monastic life. In the US, Major League Baseball players could once cop cash penalties for bringing their wives on the road. In the world of football, World Cup teams have also been subjected to strict bans on bays.
Our tours were always really short, so it never really came up as an issue. But if you're away for a long period of time, then I think it makes sense to bring your family along. I just think it's got to be managed so that you can ensure that you have team time and family time.
It's not just the matter of distraction. There's also the ongoing belief that having sex before a game can disrupt athletes' performance, and that having sex during a game can disrupt on-field play.
Here they come again. We've seen it before.
I wouldn't know if having sex before a game negatively affects performance.
So, will this ban revive India's cricketing fortunes, or will it end up being a sticky wicket?
What just happened then at the end? That was crazy.
Here to help us figure all this out is cricket journalist Bharat Sundaresan. Bharat, are India right? Are spouses a distraction, or are they just sore losers because they surrendered the trophy?
Yes.
Classic Indian cricket, right?
Yeah.
So they lose the Border-Gavaskar trophy for the first time in 10 years. They're like, okay, should we make the coaching staff a scapegoat? No, we appointed them. We can't do that. Let's go after the senior players. No, there'll be a lot of backlash. Oh, I know who has the least accountability here. Someone who doesn't play the sport or is part of the coaching staff. Let's go after the wives. And here comes the wives ban.
But Bharat, if India suddenly, turns everything around and wins every match from here on out, do we have to admit that they may be onto something?
Well, like in that package, it's happened before with other teams as well. And I think what happened with this current Indian team was it was a dressing room which was fragmented into different generational gaps. And there were certain senior players who were traveling on their own. There was no team bonding. They won that famous test in Perth. They didn't celebrate it together. I had young players bumping into me in kebab shops at the middle of the night asking me if the coach or the captain is talking about them. So there's a lot of lack of communication happening. And I think that led to the BCCI deciding to, lay sanctions on some senior members of the team without going directly, but going indirectly towards them and, imposing these wives bans. But we'll see if it turns fortunes around because they can do with it.
Has this always been India's approach?
A very interesting question that. In 2009, there was a sex dossier which was leaked to the press.
What?
The then mind conditioning coach that India had hired from overseas had slid a dossier under every player's door, which kind of encouraged players to have more sex. And apparently it did something to your testosterone levels and it would impact the performance. It happened during the ICC Champions Trophy in 2009. And there were even instructions which said, if you can't find someone, basically they said it's better than being in a bar at 2 a.m. trying to meet someone. And if you can't meet someone, there were instructions on what to do if he had to fly solo. So there was a lot of instructions and information in that dossier.
Bharat, do you happen to have a copy of this document?
No.
Anything? No? Okay,
Bharat,
sorry.
don't answer that. Bharat, thank you so much for your time. Hang on.
My email address is samtorpin. I think we have to go.
I'm telling you, it just involved a lot of imagination. That's all I'll leave it at that. Yeah.
Okay, we understand. Bharat, thank you so much for your time, as always.
Thank you so much.